If you ever feel down and out, don't worry. Just remember that the government told you it's your fault that inflation is so high. It's your fault that you can't afford to buy stuff and you're asking for more pay. It's your fault. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. That's right, we should not look at the amount of money the government has pumped into this system. No, no, no. It's your fault. Now, of course, we need to look at something serious. I'm going to show you what Janet Yellen finally admitted. I'm going to show you what's happening at a deeper level. I'm going to show you, of course, what's going on with Burger King and McDonald's, Target and Walmart, all that stuff. But the first section of this video is really going to be about what's happening with the government. Now, understand that I'll be talking about the US government here primarily, but this extends out to Canada, to the UK, Australia, and so on. Most countries are going in this exact direction. And if we follow that playbook and look at it around the world, you basically see the same activities. And that means you're going to have to pay more. Today will be considered the good old days. At some point in the near future, let's look at this. Janet Yellen says that many Americans still struggling with inflation. The U.S. Treasury Secretary expresses concerns over substantial increases in living costs. I want to make something clear. In between when she was Fed chair and then Treasury Secretary, she was getting paid $250,000 per speaking engagement. So they would have her, go in here or there, and they would give her 250 grand just to hear her speak, something that is, I'm sure, of very low value. And this is the way that things work. You see, she's completely disconnected with reality. She's like, hey, I didn't know inflation was so bad. Right? I mean, I'm looking at the stats, 3%. Of course, she doesn't do her shopping. Of course, she doesn't have to worry about little bills. She's getting paid $250,000 to show up for an hour somewhere and do a speech. How could that person have anything to do with even a normal, well-to-do person? I mean, 250 grand for a speaking engagement? A lot of very successful entrepreneurs don't get that. And she's getting 250. All right? They see it when they shop for the food. They see it in terms of the rentals with the higher mortgage rate. It's tough for the young people who would like to buy a house to enter the market. That's right. Although wages have gone up significantly, what? Okay. And at least on average, more than prices have gone up. There are substantial increases in prices that are important to people. It's substantial increases in a relatively short period of time that are very noticeable to people. And so maybe it wasn't wise to pump all that cash into the system. Maybe, I don't know. You tell me in the comments. Let's have that conversation. Or maybe it was. I really don't know, right? I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. It's not a good idea to pump 40% of all the cash that's ever been pumped into this system in a year and a half right in there. It's like, that's absurd. They were buying, in terms of the Federal Reserve, they were buying mortgage-backed securities, saying we're going to make sure that we stabilize the housing market when the housing prices were going straight up. It doesn't make any sense until you understand that it's a transfer of wealth from the everybody to the few. You understand that? That's what you have to understand. It's not about anything else. It's a transfer of wealth. And what happens here, there are periods of time when we have deflation, unless, depends on how that deflation is going. But in many cases, the deflation is a leveling of the playing field for a period of time. And then we have, sort of what happens after, which is inflation. However, if you can inflate for a long, long period of time, you create more divide. And that's really ultimately what they are trying to do. Now, I want to connect that in with this here. Okay. The repercussions of relying on stimulus for economic growth and growing debt faster than the ability to pay for it have significant economic consequences. The recent surge in debt will only further handicap our economy and prosperity in the future. You have an issue, okay? This is, by the way, Real Investment Advice, great resource. I interviewed the founder, I believe he is, of this on my channel before. Okay. Understand this. For every dollar of debt that's pumped into the system, you get less growth out of it. If they were to put $1 in there, 50 years ago, they would have got so much. Now, every year that's diminishing. So you have to pump in more just to get that $1. I should say it that way. You have to pump more in to get that $1 of growth out. It's no different, absolutely no different than a drug addict or an alcoholic who needs more of that stimulus to get that high, to get the feeling of pleasure or whatever it is that they get. There's no difference here. No difference. Now today, there was a time when we could watch TV shows and movies and get excited and so on. Now people have to binge watch entire series sitting on the couch, just sitting there until the entire series is complete. I remember having to wait as a kid for, that next day or the next week, whenever it was on. Now we just get the stimulus just being just force fed into us. And pretty soon we're going to be jacking in like Neo in the Matrix. Stimulus. Okay, stick with me here. Now, what's happening is this problem of too much debt. Now, yes, I've heard from others out there that the debt doesn't matter. Well, of course, the number doesn't matter. It's 34 trillion, 27. Even debt to GDP ratios, I argue that's one step more important, but it still doesn't matter. What you have to understand is if there's too much debt that gets put out there, then the Fed will have, long story short, I can give you the long story, but the long story short is the Fed will have to monetize that debt, and it not only creates inflation, or price inflation in a, relatively short period of time, it's instantaneous. It's instantaneous. So if you think you've ever experienced inflation, my goodness, the direct monetization of that debt will create instant devaluation of the currency. Average U.S. vehicle age hits record 12.6 years. Now, I don't think people should necessarily just get a new car, just for the fun of it, but it does give you a little anecdotal evidence that the cars are too expensive. People don't want to have the money to spend, and they're trying to stretch their dollar. We also see this here. Let me show you this chart. U.S. average age by vehicle type. Certainly getting more and more and more. It's not that the cars are built any better. We know that. Burger King to launch $5 value menu to hit back at McDonald's. Americans are cutting back on dining out, and fast food chains are rolling out deals to spark demand. You saw what McDonald's is doing. You saw, other companies are basically saying, hey, like Walmart, they're trying to bring in lower cost items and keep them there, although they're shrinkflated to the maximum. We have this. Literally, it is a fact. Concerns around the consumer have risen, particularly at the low end. And this is companies mentions of low-income consumer. This is coming right out of Goldman Sachs. So they're pulling this data, and this has been an issue because, of course, these consumers are buying the McDonald's, they're buying the Walmarts, they're buying at these places, and if they are hurting, well, then they're in trouble. They're in trouble big time. Okay, so keep that in mind. Job gains and wage growth remain healthy, particularly for lower income earners. So the idea here is, oh, no. This is nothing because, we don't see the lower income earners having a problem with getting a job and so on. I mean, I don't know what they are talking about. Higher inflation likely weighed on consumer spending power and sentiment in the first quarter. I do believe that this is something that we can all agree on, but it's not just, it's everybody. Everybody's affected by that except for the Janet Yellens of the world. And then when you look at wholesale inflation, understand there's on the producer side of things, they hit the highest rate in a year. So we know that inflation is in a position where it is sticky, it's too high, and if there are, and they clearly are, they were unwilling to bring interest rates up to a very high level to actually forcefully create a recession, a reduction in the demand. Yes, that punishes. Yes, we know that. But the bad tasting medicine is really what we need, and we just need it for a short period of time. Now we got to face that music for a much longer period of time, and then you get people who are pushed to the edge. And this is just an example. We see it all the time within the United States. We see what's happening with California and New York and other places where there's internal migration. People leaving California, they're going to Arizona, maybe they're going to Texas. We see people leaving New York, they're going oftentimes to Florida. But also same situation. Looking at this, net interprovincial migration in Canadian census, looking at it, comparing it. I mean, come on. Toronto, Montreal, Winnipeg, Vancouver, Toronto, number one on the top of the list, because it doesn't make sense. It's just become not a good place for many reasons, and you can see that it's and at the top of the list. What's going on here? Edmonton, Calgary, they are at the top of the list. Seeing it, well, it's much more affordable. Perhaps the availability of jobs is better. You could argue in some places anyway. And that's what's happening here. People are saying, okay, I'm gone. So keep that in mind as to people voting with their dollars. They vote with their feet. And you see it all along. You've got to be aware of these circumstances here today. I'm showing you what's happening on the government level. We bring that down all the way to the consumers and then how people react. So if you watch these videos right through into the end, there is a flow. It takes me, though, the entire video to get to that flow. But that's what I wanted to bring to you. If you appreciated this information, hit that thumbs up button. What can you do as an individual? I talk about it all the time. I've got playlists, including the one called How to and Solutions. You can watch that. It's on my YouTube channel, totally free. I've got everything from how to make money and other things that are on there. So I want to bring that to you. If you want the biggest detail that you can get, I mean, what I do for people is on the Friday and the Sunday finance live and business live sessions. It's much better. It's much better than in these videos, YouTube videos could ever be. I give these YouTube videos, I make sure that that's totally open. There's no, like, all the playlists, so much information that I've given over the years, been doing it daily since 2011. And I never wanted to put a paywall on that. I never did that. Okay, I never restricted that information. But if you want to sit down with me for 2 hours on Friday and 2 hours on Sunday, that's a totally different thing. Okay, and that's what we do over Zoom. If you're interested, link is in the description. And as always, I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.